April 21st, 1492, Florence, Italy. Imagine standing at a window looking out over the city. It's early, you know. The morning mist is mixing with the smoke from the bread ovens.
Right.
And a man pulls out a notebook, one he keeps hidden, and he writes down a single sentence. Not about God, not about art, but this. The day is coated in glass.
It's a beautiful line, isn't it? But it's also, well, it's deeply strange.
It's very strange. And he doesn't stop there. He says the sky isn't just blue, it's striated, crossed by invisible vectors. He says he can feel the geometry of the air on his skin. I mean, this doesn't sound like poetry. It sounds like a diagnostic report.
Exactly. And that right there is where we need to start our deep dive. Because we all think we know Leonardo da Vinci.
Of course. The beard, the Mona Lisa, the Vitruvian Man, the ultimate Renaissance man.
What if that whole image, that entire persona, is just a cover story? A very, very good one.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are opening a very controversial, some would say dangerous, set of documents, the Secret Diaries of April 1492.
And we have to be clear, these are not the notebooks you see behind glass in the museum. Those were, well, they were curated. They were meant to be found. These entries, these were meant to vanish.
They cover just 1 month, a single month. But they basically take the history we know, crumple it up, and throw it in the fire.
It feels less like reading a diary and more like finding the black box from a crash site. Because the man in these pages isn't this confident genius. He's paranoid. He's secretive. He's constantly looking over his shoulder.
And he seems to be operating, for lack of a better word, on a level of reality that nobody else in the 15th century could even begin to comprehend.
Operating is the perfect word for it. Because the central mystery we're going to try and unravel today is who or what was Leonardo da Vinci really? And I have to warn you, the answer we find in the last few pages of this diary, it's going to sound completely insane.
It's going to sound impossible. I'll admit, when I first read the final entry, my first thought was, no way, this has to be a forgery, a fiction.
And yet, when you look at all the evidence leading up to it, all the little breadcrumbs he leaves, the pieces just click into place.
They really do. So get ready. We're going to Florence. But not the Florence you see on postcards. We're going to the Florence shadows of secrets.
Right, let's set the scene properly. 1492 is a heavy, tense year. In Spain, the Reconquista is ending. Columbus is about to sail. But in Florence, the mood is dark. Lorenzo de' Medici, the Magnificent, the man who held the fragile peace together, is on his deathbed.
The city's a powder keg.
Absolutely. You have fire and brimstone preachers like Savonarola in the streets screaming about the apocalypse. The church is cracking down. And in the middle of all this is Leonardo.
Okay, so let's go back to that first entry, the invisible vectors. What is happening inside his head?
This is our first real clue. His sensory experience is, well, it's not human, not in the way we understand it. In that same entry from April 21st, he describes walking through the market.
Which would have been loud, chaotic.
Overwhelming. But he doesn't hear shouting or haggling. He writes that he hears patterns.
He says, the voices are not words, but colors. They are waves crashing against the stone.
I mean, that sounds like a classic case of synesthesia, right? Where your senses get crossed.
It is, but it's synesthesia on an entirely different level.
Right.
He isn't just seeing a color when he hears a note. He describes it as stripping away the surface layer of reality. He says, it was a day where seeing was easier than thinking. He's perceiving the raw data of the universe.
It's like, imagine you're wearing a pair of augmented reality glasses that show you the physics engine of the world, the wireframe underneath everything.
That seems to be his natural default state. And you have to wonder, how do you function like that?
It sounds utterly exhausting. Imagine trying to just buy an apple. And instead of seeing an apple, you're processing the geometric curvature of the skin, the tensile strength of the stem, the molecular decay.
And he describes that exact feeling of isolation. There's a part where he goes to the Duomo, Brunelleschi's great cathedral. He's studied it, drawn it 1,000 times. But on this day, he writes that the architecture itself vanished.
He says he could only see how the light broke at the edges, curved in arcs, and fell back into itself. He wasn't looking at a building. He was watching the behavior of photons.
And that's when he writes that line that just, it gave me chills. He closes his eyes to try and shut it all out, and he writes, I am not here to finish. I am here to prepare, to be the tool for the leap, not the leap itself.
That right there. That's the core of it. The burden of knowledge. He sees too much. He knows too much. And he is completely, utterly alone in that knowledge. There is no one on the planet he can talk to about this.
Which brings us to that story with his assistant, Francesco. I think this really paints a picture of just how lonely this man was.
Oh, it's a heartbreaking little anecdote. Francesco, his apprentice, had been working all night on a gear for some machine.
Trying to impress the master.
Exactly. He brings it to Leonardo, so proud of his work. But the gear is wrong. It's rough, the ratios are slightly off, it's not perfect.
And in a normal story, the master would get angry or lecture him or show him how to fix it.
Leonardo does none of that. He picks up this heavy, flawed piece of metal, he turns it over in his hands, he spins it, watches the light catch on the teeth, and he looks at Francesco and says, "It is understood."
It is understood. Not you have understood. The gear. He's talking to the gear.
Precisely. And you can just imagine Francesco standing there, completely baffled. "Maestro, it's a piece of brass. It doesn't understand anything." But for Leonardo, it does. In his diary, he calls machines mirrors of truth. He says they are thought forms made of metal.
Because the machine, even a flawed one, is an attempt to embody a universal law. And he felt a kinship with that law.
A greater kinship than he felt with the people around him. It's like he's trying to find intelligence wherever he can, even in an inanimate object, because he can't find it on his level in any of the humans.
So sad in a way.
And to cope with this sensory overload and isolation, he develops these strange mental techniques. He does it using camphor.
The smell of camphor, that's a very strong medicinal smell, like mothballs.
Right. He was building a spiral model of something. The diary is vague, but it sounds like a double helix, bizarrely enough. And he uses beeswax soaked in camphor to hold the joints together. And he writes, "The smell anchors the thought."
He's hacking his own brain.
He is. Truth is often remembered through what is not said. He's using scent to create a save point for a memory, for an idea, because he knows that writing it all down plainly is just too dangerous.
Which brings us to the next layer of this whole mystery. If you know things that your entire world considers impossible or worse, heretical, you become a target.
You become paranoid. But, as the old saying goes, it's not paranoia if they're really out to get you.
And in April 1492, they were definitely out to get him.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the fingers of smoke. This is the entry for April 17th. Leonardo's in his studio. His patron, Ludovico Sforza the Duke, pays him a visit. But he's not alone.
He's brought a friend, a Dominican monk.
And you have to understand, the Dominicans were the intellectual heavyweights of the Inquisition. They were the hounds of the Lord. This was not a friendly social call.
And Leonardo's description of this monk is, it's terrifying. He doesn't even describe his face or his clothes. He just writes, his eyes felt me like fingers made of smoke.
Fingers made of smoke. It's such a perfect image for the Inquisition. You can't see it, you can't grab it, but it seeps into everything and leaves a residue.
So what does he do? He's got a table full of schematics that could get him burned at the stake.
His reaction is immediate and practiced. He doesn't panic, he just shifts gears. He deploys a tactic of strategic boredom.
He starts talking about irrigation ditches.
For ages, he writes, "Silence is louder than words when one is under observation." So he starts explaining in excruciating detail a new water crank mechanism for a local farm. He becomes the most boring engineer in Florence. He hides his genius in plain sight by cloaking it in the mundane.
But it goes deeper than just putting on an act. The diary reveals he had these incredible physical protocols for information security. The wind instrument story just blew my mind.
It's pure spycraft. It's something out of a Cold War thriller. He was building a highly complex device, probably to measure wind speed and air density for his flying machines.
Which, to the church, would be seen as him trying to conquer the heavens, God's domain. Heresy.
Exactly. So he knew if anyone found the complete machine, he was done for. So what does he do?
He uses what we'd call, like, distributed storage or sharding.
It's brilliant. He takes the machine apart. He sends the precision lenses to a glassmaker in one part of the city. He sends the brass housing to a smith in another district. The gears go to a clockmaker miles away.
5 different workshops cross Florence, each building one small part of a machine they don't understand.
Precisely. To the glassmaker, it's just an unusual lens order. To the smith, it's just a strange bracket. If they find one, they find nothing, Leonardo writes. If they find all, they do not know what it was. He's the only person who holds the encryption key, the knowledge to assemble it.
That's a level of sophistication that is just. It's centuries ahead of its time. And it makes you rethink all the drawings we do have. You know, the famous ones, the tank, the glider, the rapid-fire crossbows.
Right. And for centuries, historians have sort of chuckled at them because many of them have obvious flaws.
The tank, for instance. It looks amazing, like a giant armored turtle bristling with cannons. But if you actually build it from his drawings, the gear train is designed so the front wheels and the back wheels turn in opposite directions.
It would tear itself apart to just sit there, grinding its gears.
And the common explanation is, well, Leonardo was a brilliant artist, but maybe not such a great engineer. He made a mistake.
But the diary flatly contradicts that. He writes about these war machines, and he calls them seeds, not weapons. And he admits explicitly that he included intentional flaws.
He sabotaged his own inventions on purpose.
Yes, he was terrified of what humanity in its current state would do with him. He wanted to introduce the concept of an armored fighting vehicle, to plant that seed in our collective imagination. But he made sure we couldn't actually build it and start killing each other with it in 1492.
He put a child lock on the technology.
That's a perfect way to put it. He's giving us the blueprint, but hiding the batteries. He writes, "The world is not ready, but that must not be a reason to be silent." He's walking this incredible moral tightrope.
And he took concealment to an even more extreme level. We all know about his mirror writing backwards.
Which most people just think is a quirk because he was left-handed.
But the diary talks about something else, something he calls a Schrift.
Breath script. It sounds like something out of a fantasy novel.
It really does. What was it?
It's chemistry. He describes a special ink he formulated. It's either invisible or extremely faint on the page. But when you expose it to the heat and moisture of human breath, or, say, the steam from a kettle, it doesn't appear. It vanishes completely.
Wait, it vanishes, not appears. Usually invisible ink appears with heat.
Exactly. It's the opposite. It's self-destructing ink. The translation is a little tricky. It could mean it dissolves or fades into the paper. But the intent is clear. He writes, "I believe that not only the eye, but also the breath is monitored."
He's so paranoid, he thinks people are analyzing the steam from his breath.
He was creating temporary truth. He would write down a truly dangerous thought as a mathematical proof, an anatomical discovery, just to get it out of his head, to smooth the mind. And then he would breathe on it, and it would be gone forever.
My God, that means there could be thousands of pages of Leonardo's greatest work that are now just blank sheets of paper.
It's a tragic thought. But for him, it was a necessary precaution. Because the most dangerous knowledge he was pursuing wasn't about tanks or flying machines. It was about us, the human body.
And this is where things get really serious. This is where the Inquisition stops just watching and starts getting actively involved. Because in 1492, cutting open a human body wasn't just illegal, it was a profound sin.
It was desecration of a holy temple. The church taught that the body was a divine mystery, the vessel of the soul. You don't take a miracle apart to see how the gears work. But Leonardo, he couldn't stop himself.
He tells a story about a young novice at the monastery of Santa Marta. This poor kid was caught simply studying lenses in the structure of a cow's eye.
And the punishment was severe. The abbot told him, the eye is not meant to be taken apart. It is meant to see God's work. That is the intellectual brick wall that Leonardo is constantly smashing his head against. The world sees mystery, and he sees mechanics.
And nowhere is that clearer than in his anatomical drawings. He sketches a shoulder joint, the muscles of the leg, and then the heart.
And you have to understand, at the time, the heart was seen as this spiritual furnace. It heated the blood. It was the seat of courage and love.
It was a metaphor.
Right. And Leonardo looks at it and writes, it is a pump. He describes 4 chambers. He talks about check valves and drafts. He looks at the very center of human life and emotion, and he sees a plumbing diagram.
Life is structure, not magic. That seems to be his driving thesis.
It is, but you can feel the coldness in it to the distance.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. There's an emotional disconnect.
There is. And it all circles back to that isolation we talked about. There's this moment on April 21st. He's taking a break from his work. He's watching a small child in a courtyard, drawing in the dirt with a stick. The kid is trying to draw a circle.
And it's crooked, of course, wobbly.
And the child is just delighted with it, pure joy. And Leonardo watches him, and he writes that he feels affection, but also a strange distance. And then he uses this word. He says he feels like he is simulating humanity.
Simulating humanity. That is such a precise and frankly, chilling choice of words. It's not participating or experiencing, it's simulating.
Like an actor running through his lines, or a computer running a program. He watches this beautiful, simple human moment. And his observation is that truth is not linear, but cyclic. He's analyzing the geometry of the child's play instead of just feeling the joy of it.
It's like there's a sheet of glass between him and the rest of the world. And he's on one side just taking notes.
He's studying us like we're a fascinating but alien species of insect.
And the insects are starting to notice because the diary entry for April 28th, that's when the hammer finally drops.
The summons. The rumors and the whispers have finally solidified into a formal document. The Inquisition summons him to appear. They specifically want to discuss reports of mechanical animals and artificial anatomy.
This is the moment where any sane person would run, pack a bag, get on a horse, and head for Venice or somewhere the church's power is weaker.
But Leonardo doesn't operate on sanity, he operates on logic. He writes in his diary, resistance only accelerates what must be delayed. He knows running will just confirm their suspicions. It's an admission of guilt.
So he does the opposite.
He sends his assistant, Francesco, away to protect the boy. And then he calmly prepares his notes and walks straight into the lion's den.
The interrogation happens on April 29th. And the diary gives us this incredible, almost play-by-play account. It's a masterclass in psychological warfare. It's the artist versus the inquisitor.
And the inquisitors are smart. They try to set a very clever trap for him. They don't ask him why he draws these things, because that would lead to a philosophical debate, and they know he'd run circles around them.
Right, so they ask him how.
Exactly. How do you know the precise curve of the ribs, maestro? How do you know the heart has 4 chambers when God has sealed it from our view?
They're trying to force him to admit to one of 2 things, dissection or necromancy.
Either one gets him burned. If he says, I cut open a body, he's a heretic. If he says, a spirit told me, he's a warlock. It's a perfect trap.
How does he get out of it?
He plays the role of the holy fool, the divinely inspired artist. He opens his eyes wide, feigns complete innocence, and says, I only draw what I see. I am but a humble hand copying the magnificent glory of the Lord's own creation.
He turns their own theology against them.
Brilliantly. He goes on and on, praising the complexity of the human body, but framing it as an act of worship. Who could invent such a perfect machine but God himself? I am just a child, marveling at the gears of his divine clockwork.
He's essentially saying, if I admire the painting, am I not praising the painter?
And then for the final move, the coup de grace. He stops, looks the head inquisitor right in the eye, a man who is doubtless powerful and vain, and he offers to paint his portrait.
He bribes him with art, with flattery.
He appeals to his ego. He writes later that night, I saw the calculation in his eyes. The inquisitor realizes that having a portrait by the great Leonardo da Vinci to hang in your palazzo is worth far more socially and politically than burning some oddball artist.
And they let him go?
They let him go. But he's not truly free. He's compromised. The deal is that from now on, all of his future work must be submitted for review by the church. He writes, my future work must now be seen through the grid of their eyes.
And that changes everything for him.
It's the pivot point. It forces him to go completely underground with his real research. This is the moment Leonardo stops trying to teach his own generation and starts creating a time capsule for the future. He decides to hide his most important work in places, as he puts it, only death can open.
He becomes silent.
Exactly. He shifts from broadcasting his ideas to archiving them for a time when the world might be ready.
Okay, so let's pause and take stock here. The picture we have is consistent. He's a genius, born centuries ahead of his time, a man who sees the mathematical source code behind reality, a man forced by a superstitious, fearful world to hide his brilliance. It's a tragic, but ultimately human story.
It is. And for 500 years, that is the story we have told ourselves. It's the accepted narrative.
You said at the beginning that the end of this diary changes everything.
It shatters it.
You said it challenges the very idea of who or what he was.
Yes. For that, we have to go to the entry from the evening of April 28th. This is the night before the interrogation. He's alone in his studio. He genuinely believes that there's a good chance he will be arrested, tortured, and executed the next day.
So this is essentially a final statement, a last will and testament.
It's a final data preservation protocol. He writes down his true origin story just in case he doesn't survive. And this is where the deep dive goes off the charts.
Yeah.
Because he writes that the biological Leonardo da Vinci, the human baby born in the village of Vinci in 1452, was not the person writing this diary.
I'm sorry, what?
He claims there's a swap.
A swap? You mean like a changeling in a fairy tale?
He's very specific. He writes that 3 days after the human child was born, it was exchanged. That baby, the original Leonardo, was given to a monastery as a foundling. He was, in his words, passed around like a painting nobody wants, and lived out his life as a completely anonymous monk.
Okay, hold on, stop. Are you telling me that the Leonardo da Vinci we know wasn't Leonardo da Vinci?
I'm telling you what this source says. The entity writing this diary states, quote, I was built, not born.
Built.
Built. And then he gives an origin point. Not a village, not a country, a stellar coordinate, he writes. Kepler, 144.
Kepler, 144.
Yes.
Wait a minute. Johannes Kepler, the astronomer, he lived in the 17th century. The Kepler Space Telescope that designated these star systems is from the 21st century. How in God's name could a man in 1492 write down the designation Kepler 144?
That is the question, isn't it? That's the smoking gun. He describes it as a light between two suns. He describes the orbital mechanics of its planets, the fact that he uses a name, a designation that would not exist for another 500 years.
Well,
You really only have two possibilities.
one is that this entire diary is an impossibly clever and detailed modern forgery. Or he wasn't from here.
Well, he wasn't from here.
So,
Yeah.
let's just walk down this path. Are you saying Leonardo da Vinci, the man who painted The Last Supper, was an alien, an avatar,
Okay.
biological robot?
He uses the term vessel. And suddenly, all those bizarre little details we've been talking about, they don't just seem strange anymore. They click into place. The synesthesia, the invisible vectors.
He wasn't a poet. He was a sensor suite, processing raw environmental data.
Exactly. The feeling of simulating humanity. He writes that he had to consciously learn to be clumsy as a child because his natural state was one of absolute mechanical precision. He notes that he never gets sick. His teeth don't decay. And the heart, remember the heart.
He called it a pump, a machine.
He writes in this final entry, "My heart beats with the precision of a machine." He wasn't using a metaphor. He was giving a technical description of his own internal anatomy. When he held that flawed gear and said, "It is understood," he wasn't being poetic. He was recognizing a kindred spirit. He was more like the gear than he was like Francesco.
This is blowing my mind, but it explains the disconnect, that uncanny valley feeling he had watching the child play. He wasn't one of us.
And it explains the mission. Why send a construct here? To 15th century Italy, of all places. He calls his purpose seed planting.
Seed planting.
Yes. He writes that his people, the Watchers, had observed Earth for millennia. They saw knowledge flare up and then die out. They saw the Library of Alexandria burn. They saw Europe sink into the Dark Ages. And they decided that passive observation was no longer enough. We were on a path to self-destruction or permanent stagnation.
So they sent a catalyst.
Someone to reintroduce lost or advanced concepts. Aerodynamics. Anatomy. Advanced mechanics. Not to rule us, not to save us, but just to put the ideas back on the table, to plant them like seeds.
The tanks, the gliders, the flawed designs.
They were never meant to be built in 1492. They were conceptual file dumps. He was embedding these ideas into human history so they would be there waiting for us when we were finally ready to understand them.
That's why he intentionally sabotaged them.
They were safety protocols. You don't give a primitive warlike species fully functional weapons of the future. You give them a drawing of an atom and hope that in a few thousand years they figure out nuclear energy and don't just build bombs. He gave us the schematics, but he kept the engine keys until we grew up.
So the paranoia, it wasn't just about the Pope and the Inquisition.
It was operational security. He was a deep cover agent, and his mission was to nurture an entire planet's technological evolution without getting caught. If the Inquisition had discovered he wasn't human, it's game over. Mission failed. The seeds wither on the vine.
I am not here to win. I am here to work.
That's the line. It's the ultimate statement of purpose. He accepts that he'll never be known for what he truly is. He's just a delivery system. A highly advanced, bioengineered USB drive dropped into the heart of the Renaissance.
You know, it's an incredible thought, even if you choose not to believe the alien part, just the narrative itself. To think of him sitting in that dark room, writing in disappearing ink, knowing his home is light years away, pretending to be a clumsy, eccentric artist, just to help a species that keeps trying to burn him at the stake.
Is the absolute definition of sacrifice.
So if we take this as true, even for a moment, if Leonardo was a seed planter from Kepler 144, we have to ask the big final question.
Is the mission over? Have all the seeds sprouted?
Exactly. We look at his notebooks today and we pat ourselves on the back. Wow, he predicted the helicopter. He predicted the scuba suit. But there are hundreds of pages in those notebooks filled with things we still don't understand. Bizarre geometric forms, sketches of energy fields, designs that art historians just dismiss as doodles or fantasies.
But if the tank wasn't a fantasy, if the glider wasn't a fantasy,
then what about the other stuff? What about the blueprints for things we haven't built yet?
perhaps we are only now in the 21st century entering the spring that he prepared for. Perhaps those doodles are actually schematics for clean energy systems, or faster-than-light travel, or medical technologies we can't even dream of.
He said he hid his real work where only death can open.
And maybe those hiding places are still out there. Maybe they're not physical places. Maybe they're encoded in the brushstrokes of his paintings or in the mathematics of his drawings, waiting for a technology or perspective that can finally decode them.
Waiting for the gear to finally understand.
Waiting for us to be ready.
Well, I don't know about you, but I am never going to look at the Mona Lisa the same way again. From now on, I'm going to be looking for the star map in her eyes.
As well you should.
Thanks for diving deep with us into the secret diaries of April 1492. Keep your eyes on the stars, and maybe take a second look at those old family heirlooms. You never know what blueprints might be hiding inside. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.